What's up, rockers? Welcome to another episode of the Talk Louder podcast, where we geek out on all things rock and roll. Hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Leave us your likes and comments. You can also leave likes and comments on our Facebook page. Follow us on iTunes, Spotify, Instagram at talklouder_podcast. And of course, our website, talklouderpodcast.com, where you'll find links to our merch and all of our previous episodes. I'm Metal Dave, along with my co-host, Jason McMaster. And today, we're joined by a couple of guys who put their passion for rock and roll together with their respective talents and came up with this amazing photo book called Pictures Alive. It is a full-color glossy over, I think there's 400 photos. It is called Pictures Alive, Rock Shows of the 80s and Beyond. And as the title suggests, it chronicles the concert tours of the 80s. So if album names like Pyromania, Love at First Sting, Shout at the Devil, Flick of the Switch, Fair Warning, Lick It Up, if any of that registers with you, you're going to want this book. It's amazing. The cool thing is it's put together by two guys we should name our guest, Steve Roney and Scott Davis. Steve is the photographer, and all of these photos were taken by him in the 80s when he snuck his camera into the arena. He tells us a little bit about the process of smuggling his camera into the arena, how he got it past security.
I think he has this one framed on his wall behind him.
Which one is that?
If you watch the interview.
Oh, yeah.
If you watch the interview, you can see this one blown up and framed on the wall behind him. I'm holding up, of course, a picture of Gene Simmons spitting the fire.
Breathing fire. Yeah,
that's an unbelievable photo.
Yeah.
And I bet he felt the heat. I bet he felt the heat.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The thing about this book is, and they make the point in the discussion today, all these photos were taken by Steve during the 80s, and they've never been published before. And he wasn't shooting for a media outlet. So the first and only place you're ever going to see these photos is in this book. So that makes it really unique. And then Steve goes the extra mile and includes 2 or 3 really short paragraphs with each band detailing his experience at that concert, how he smuggled the gear in, memories of the show, being with his buddies, that sort of thing.
I want to point out this was in the Bay Area, San Francisco area, Oakland, Cow Palace, all of the cool venues out there. That would have been cool to talk to him. We didn't get to run down a list of venues, but just anywhere in the Bay Area and the SF area. He does mention Cow Palace quite a few times.
Yeah.
Probably the Warfield, places like the Fillmore, probably stuff like that. Steve's a few years older than us, so he was on the shoulder of his friend Dale's, taking photos. Had to sneak in the camera, so it's crazy. I mean, you could have almost made it reminds me of, and I'm not no one shoot at me, but I'm not really a fan of the movie Detroit Rock City.
Yeah.
I'm a giant Kiss fan, but the movie was just kind of like Hollywood for me or something. But anyway, it reminds me of a scene of, these guys are on a mission to go to the concert. This guy's on a mission to worry enough about sneaking his camera in, and we'll let Steve, in his own words, describe how he did it.
Yeah.
But this book is incredible. We can go on all day about how awesome this book is. Again, picturesalive.net is how you can get this. This has testimonials on their website that I just mentioned. People have, the guys in Y&T, Eddie Trunk, they have this book. I'm name dropping the people that these guys name drop because, they got this book. They were blown away. They talk about it. I just think that it's and they talk about these guys, Steve Roney and Scott Davis, they decided to put out this as a legacy piece, not to make money. It's not a money grab. It is like a moment in time.
Yeah.
And it's 35 millimeter film. You have to think about technology and production. When he's, on Dale's shoulders with after he peeled the camera out of his jacket or whatever, and he's trying to wait for the right light and for the fog machine to stop blowing in his face. And he's, and back then, I don't know, some of our older Talk Louder fans can attest to this. When you think about going to a concert now, the lighting was, you got to think digital and analog. Well, analog is what you saw in the 80s. The lights are hot. There's no LEDs anywhere. The lights are hot. It's general admission. He was in a war zone, waiting for the lighting to be good, waiting for the right moment for Ace Frehley to stand in the right place, which he probably struggled to do sometimes. All of that. I mean, you had to wait for David Lee Roth to move out of the way to take a picture of Eddie, stuff, whatever it was. And he captured it and talks about all of these moments a little bit in the book. That's incredible. Dave's holding up a photo of Brian Johnson with Angus on his shoulders, and it's just clear as day. Yeah. I mean, I wish I had a blow up photo of that. I would hang it on my wall right here.
Yeah, there's Richie Blackmore.
Incredible.
Yeah, incredible. I mean, I really felt like I was looking at an old yearbook, because besides the photos, let me show you this real quick. There's all these ads from the newspapers that back in the day, your local newspaper would carry an ad advertising the upcoming concerts. I remember seeing some of these when I was a kid. Yeah. He's got the ticket stubs. He's got the ads from the newspapers. He's got the photos that he shot himself. And then he's got the little anecdotes about his memories of that particular concert. And again, I'm talking, if you were in high school in the 80s and you remember, the big deal that was Pyromania and Love at First Sting and, Theater of Pain and
Balls to the Wall.
The Last in Line. Yeah. I mean, Dio's one of his favorites. Dio's well represented in this book. It's just a great, pardon the pun, snapshot of a time in all of our lives. If you're of a certain age, me definitely, and Jason as well. But
it's unfortunate and fortunate in the same breath that these guys have captured these moments, because a lot of our heroes, our fallen heroes, have been captured forever in this book.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not about going online and just typing in old, show me old photos of Dio and Lemmy and whatever, or, whoever and whatever. It's kind of like, you can hold this in your hand. It's like buying a record,
Yeah. And again, one of a kind photos never before seen. So it's not something you've seen before in magazines.
I don't feel like it would be that much fun to download a version of this book.
You got to hold it in your hand. It's just like an album.
That's where I was going with it. Yeah.
It's the equivalent of a vinyl record. You have to have it in your hand.
That's right,
that thing, man. Full color, glossy. I forget how many pages they said, but there's 400 photos. It weighs 3 pounds.
300 pages. It's 400 photos with very little reading involved, which makes me like it. Like I say in the interview, they had me at pictures.
But the reading that is available is very insightful, and I love that just as much as the photos. So, picturesalive.net is the website where you can order it, take a look. They've got some photos. You can get a preview of it there. But our guests today, Steve Roney and Scott Davis with Pictures Alive on the Talk Louder podcast.
Scott and I met from a mutual friend back in like 1983, 84. I'm a couple of years older than Scott. And this mutual friend said, I got a buddy, Scott, who's a huge Kiss fan. And back then I had all these photos in glass 8x10 frames on all my walls in my bedroom. Okay. So whenever people would come over for the first time, they'd just go, oh my God, look at these pictures. Cause I had half of them then. So Scott came over for the first time. I think his mom dropped him off or something like that, cause he wasn't driving yet. And he was a big Kiss fan as I was, and we just connected from there as being Kiss fans. And I think he probably bought a couple of my photos back then, or I gave him some. And we just became friends from there, big Kiss fans. And 40 years later, let's put a book together. And when I asked Scott a couple of years ago, I said, hey, I got this idea. I want to run by you. And he was very familiar with all my photos. And I said, what if we did this book, And right away he says, yeah, let's do it. not knowing what to expect, what it was going to cost, what we were going to do with it, how long it was going to take. Took 2 years, by the way. And then here we are with you guys. That's the long and short of it.
Okay. Well, there's a big giant part missing.
I was giving the long and short of it.
Yeah. No, that's cool. Let's talk about how, your first concert that you ended up with a camera in your hand and how it didn't get snatched away from you or thrown in the garbage, or did you sneak it in your underwear or what?
Well, as you guys remember back then, it always said on the ticket, no cameras allowed.
Yeah.
At least for us in the Bay Area here, it always said no cameras allowed.
Yeah.
And I was in high school and I was taking some photography classes and I was just into it. And I thought, how cool would it be if I can actually get my own photos of my heroes that we're seeing, right? And I had the camera and a small zoom lens. And you're right, they pat you down. And back then, I'm all 15, 16 years old when I started doing this. And I had a black members only jacket, right? And I would take the camera apart. I'd take it apart, take the body camera off the lens off the body. And what I would do is I would stick it on the inside of the sleeve under this here, okay? Then I take the lens and do the same over here. I would push my sleeves up so I looked all bulky, okay? Then I had the camera strap wrapped around my waist like a belt, okay? And the film was already in the camera. I always, for the most part, only had one roll of film. And when I'd walk in for the pat down, I would open my jacket and raise my elbows like this, and they would pat up to my armpits, not knowing 2 inches away is the camera.
Yeah.
And once I got past that, I was home free because it was always general admission back then. So once I got into the show, I was generally home free. And that's how I did it, maybe 60 plus times.
Yeah, there's a part in the book that first of all, thanks for sharing that, because I did want to bring that up. I thought it was really interesting how you smuggled the camera in bits and pieces on your various parts of your body and whatnot. But there's a lesson in the book that I thought was interesting. You just said that you most of the time took in one roll of film and you already had it loaded in the camera, but you learned a valuable lesson about that. I want you to share that story with our audience.
Well, what happened was, again, I'm a kid in high school and, I still had to pay for film developing. So I didn't have a lot of money to be spending on film. And the other thing was I didn't want to spend a majority of the concert taking photos. I wanted to enjoy the concert. You know what I mean? So I may be taking pictures for 10, 15 minutes of the show throughout the show. So I want to remember the show itself. But I think what you're alluding to is Van Halen, a couple of Van Halen shows. The first one, 81, the very first show I talk about, we had second row center seats, Van Halen at the in 1981 Fair Warning tour at Oakland, and I decided to bring 2 rolls of film. I was going to splurge, let's bring 2 rolls of film, and got in, and I realized we were so close to the stage that security was just a few feet away from me. I just kind of conceded I can't take pictures because I got security, 6 feet in front of me.
Right.
So the show goes on. My buddy was with me. He got his camera. Then I noticed he's taking pictures. So I said, "What the hell?" So I started taking pictures. I'm like 7, 8 feet away from the guys in Van Halen. I'm that close, and the lighting was great. I'm getting these great shots. I said, I should probably stop, roll this film up, and then maybe pop the other roll of film. I didn't. I got greedy and I got caught. And the guy saw me. He kind of did this to me. And I rolled the film up. I never given him a roll of film that I just rolled up, so it wasn't like I ripped it out, I waited a few minutes, a few songs later, I popped the other roll of film in. I started doing the same thing, getting great shots. And I said, "Okay, Steve, you should stop." But Steve didn't listen. I kept going, and he busted me again. And this time I just ripped it out of the camera and threw it at his feet. I was just really upset. Then the next year, 82, when Van Halen came back to Calp House, I'm going to splurge. I'm going to take 2 rolls of film. And I had the film in the camera, and I had my buddy put the other roll of film in his shoe. And going through the pat down, they find the camera. They feel the camera. He goes, "Hey, what's that?" And I pull it out. And now the whole line behind me, people they want to see I'm smuggling, And I pull out the camera, and the guy goes, "Hey, you can't bring that in. You got to bring it back to your car." And I don't know how I thought this, but I said, "I don't have a car. I got dropped off. Just take my film." He goes, "You only have the 1 roll of film?" I said, "Yeah, that's all I got." So he actually took the brand new roll of film out of my camera, let me bring the camera into the show, Once I got in, my buddy gave me the roll of film in his shoe, and I got those great shots from 1982 at the Cowbell.
I love it. I love it. So there's, I remember the days, first of all, the time period we're talking about, your book here it's called Pictures Alive, Rock Shows of the 80s and Beyond. And so walking through this book, first of all, thank you for sending it to me.
Yeah.
I loved it. I devoured it the minute it arrived at my door. I think I finished it in one night.
Me too.
And one of the things I loved about it was it took me back. It's exactly my time frame for when I started going to concerts. I went to my first concert in '83. It was Kiss Creatures of the Night, which you covered here in your book.
Yeah.
And then I was off to the races. So everything that you mentioned in this book, every concert, I remember that tour. I was in San Antonio, so some of the opening acts might have been different or whatever. But when you describe the tour, and you've got great photos of the ads from the newspapers and the ticket stubs, it all came rushing back because I save a lot of that stuff myself. But for people who are listening, we're talking about, the era when new albums were Defenders of the Faith, Number of the Beast, Out of the Cellar, Blackout, Love at First Sting, Diver Down, Fair Warning, it's Shout at the Devil, Theater of Pain. This is great stuff. And so, and I remember those days because you used to smuggle things into the camera or into the arena. It would either be a camera or contraband of some sort, or you do the old ticket swap with a buddy so he could get down to the floor seat or whatever. But I want to make clear, so you're doing this on the sly. You're not doing this because you have a media pass or whatever. All these photos were taken strictly bootleg, right? On the lowdown.
Yeah, and you got to remember, guys. Back then, again, I'm a teenager in high school. I had no desire to, sell these or make money off these. It was just a hobby. You know what I mean? And I just love the fact that at one point, all four of my walls in my bedroom, I had like 160 8x10 frame photos of my favorite ones. Just, and when I would take these pictures, I'd be lucky to get a few good shots out of a full roll. Yeah. Okay. It wasn't like I got 36 great shots. I didn't. Hell, I could do 4 books of photos with out of focus and too dark. I could do tons of books of those. I got a lot of crap photos, but the ones that are good are in this book.
Yeah.
So
that was it. That was another thing that resonated with me. My background is in music journalism. So I interview bands, I review concerts, I review albums, that sort of thing. And once in a while, I was given a photo pass. Not because I'm a photographer at all, but the publicist would just assume that I'm reviewing the show, so I need all the credentials. I need the guest list and I need the photo pass and whatnot. So there were times when I'd get into shows with a photo pass, and I'd borrow a camera from someone who was a real photographer and tell them to put it on a neutral setting. And so I've got some photos around my office here. Steven Tyler, Mick Jagger, Eddie Van Halen, the Ramones. And so I remember I had my spare rolls of film literally on the edge of the stage. Now I'm legit, right? So I don't have to smuggle the stuff in. But I know what you mean. You shoot everything that moves for the first 3 songs, and maybe you walk away with 5 great shots.
Well, I was always very envious of the guys like yourself that were leaning on the stage, not getting pushed around and, getting crushed, right?
Yeah.
And, most of the times I'm on, my buddy Dale's shoulders or whoever I was with. So I'm above the crowd a bit. But that'd be for like a minute or two. And I'd be sitting there waiting for the lighting to be just right because everything's manual, no flash, no autofocus. This is,
right.
This is, the real deal. But we're being swayed back and forth like this because this is general admission. This isn't reserved seating. And I'd see those guys, I'd see those photographers down in front, basically, like I said, leaning on the stage, and I'm thinking, oh man, what is that like? I can only imagine what that is like. You know what I mean? But it's fine. it was a lot of fun. And then bringing Scott into the picture, again, he knew of my stuff, and this book looks the way it does because of Scott Davis.
Yeah.
I might have taken the photos, but he's the one who did all the design work, had all the ideas put together, and that's why it looks the way it does.
So Scott, you and Steve were basically Kiss nerd buddies at an early age.
Yeah.
And that's much like everyone else in this room.
Yeah.
I mean, you
Still
know,
awesome.
not to get into my story, but I had a different Kiss t-shirt for every day of the week. I had a Kiss belt buckle I wore every day. Some days I put a hat on top. I was a billboard, and it's all I wanted to talk about. So I had selected friends.
Yeah.
Because everybody else just like, get away from me. Just get away from me kind of a thing. So you guys were attracted to each other for the right reasons here. And how old were you, Scott?
I was probably 15, 16 when I met Steve. I think he's 3 years older than me.
Were you guys going to like parties, like weekend parties?
Never. No. We didn't even go to concerts together. Yeah.
Yeah, we went to different schools.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so and you know what Steve didn't say when he was talking about meeting for the first time. I remember, you know, like I said, I go over to Steve's house and you know, the pictures blew me away. He had all these on the wall and all that stuff. But the second thing was Steve had a real early black and yellow Charvel, like Eddie Van Halen's, and he also had a cherry sunburst Les Paul like Ace. So I was like, holy shit, this guy's got them both. Like I'd never even seen a real electric guitar at that time, other than, you know, at Guitar Center, but never one I could actually pick up and whatnot. And I remember I asked him if I could put on the Les Paul, you know, like Ace Frehley and stuff. And, you know, and I was almost disappointed because it was so heavy and it was just wasn't what I thought it was going to be. But that was like a funny thing that also kind of binded us. I was like, okay, Steve's got the guitars, man. That's pretty badass.
It's interesting not to pause for too long, but you mentioned like, as you said, like at a Guitar Center. Now in the 80s, the only place there were guitar centers was California.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So now it's in everywhere. It's like fucking Walmart, right? Guitar centers are everywhere. And of course, everything's online. You don't even need a storefront anymore. So, but the point is that if you're in California, you've Guitar Center's been in your vocabulary since you were a child.
That's true. Oh yeah.
So just for the record, yeah, for people listening, you know, Guitar Center, well, shit, that's brand new around here comparatively. So we're talking mid 80s, probably, right? Early to mid 80s.
Early 80s.
And did you, when you guys had the idea, so you guys knew each other, you guys stayed in touch the whole time. Did you guys go to college together or?
No.
Okay.
No. Yeah, he said he's a couple years younger than I am.
Yeah.
And we lived maybe, 10, 15 minutes away from each other in different cities. But we just always, it was Kiss that bonded us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't think we ever went to a concert together.
Wow.
But, he'd come over to my house every now and then and, we'd talk music or he'd look at my photos. But, we just always stayed in touch and that was it, right?
We were at a couple of concerts together, like Creatures of the Night, but we didn't go with each other to them.
I get it.
And then, Steve had a little white Toyota truck at the time. And then I ended up buying a little truck. And then it was kind of like when I was going into college and Steve was working that we kind of started hanging out a little bit more, going to the record store, grabbing something to eat, that type of thing. And then that kind of solidified our relationship just as friends with always music, as the background. Kiss, when Ace Frehley went solo with Rock Soldiers, all that time, that we were really kind of hanging out. And then, we never lost touch, but when, to kind of bring you up to speed, I was working on this Kiss book, the infamous Magic book. And that wasn't going anywhere. And I decided to leave the project. And then Steve, who was always checking in because he wanted to buy the book, he wanted to know how things were going. And I said, they're not going too good. And, and finally he just said, hey man, I always wanted to do a book of my photos. Would you be interested? And it was like, that was it. Yep. Magic is done. I'm out of here. And then, so we literally started like the next day and,
wow.
And we are. Yeah. So
when you guys are putting this book together, Steve obviously brings the photos. Scott, you bring the design and the layout experience. When you guys are working as a team putting this book together, what did you learn about each other's respective talents that caught your attention respectively?
Well, I'm going to go first, Scotty, here.
Okay.
I already had the faith in Scott that this was going to be pretty cool. And we've said more than once, like it's been it was a 2-year, very fun ride. Okay. And I got to see how this guy, and again, he lives in Massachusetts. I live in California. So everything was on the phone. Everything we did was on the phone. And we'd be on the phone several times a week talking for hours. I would send him all the photos and he'd have ideas. And I was just really like, I don't think I ever said no, or I don't like that idea once to Scott. I mean, and he would let me chime in here and there, but it was a great, great working arrangement. It really was. And I mean, that's why I'm always saying how, okay, maybe I took the photos, but Scott made this book really look good. And that's his talents. That's what he does.
Dave's already held it up. I'm going to hold it up again, just so you guys know that we have received. Yeah.
I think what I was getting at was, so Steve, what did you learn about graphic design and layout that maybe you didn't know that was brought to your attention by working with Scott? And then Scott, what did you learn about the art of shooting a photo that maybe you took for granted or just never gave any thought? That's kind of what I'm looking for here.
Well, to answer your question, what did I learn? I don't know if I can really describe it. Just he would show me examples. He would do, like, if we talked about, we call each band was a spread. Each show was a spread. Okay, we're doing the Black Sabbath 1982 Mob Rule spread. Okay, and that meant that's all Black Sabbath from that tour. And a lot of it was I'd have to tell him the story, what happened that time, and he would put it together. It was like being like he was like a ghostwriter. I would tell him how it was, and then he would come back to me with it, and we would fine tune it, and then he would show me how the layout was going. And I don't know all the technical terms, but what he did each time was just like, wow, that's so cool. The guy just has it in his blood. He really does. And I couldn't think of anyone else I'd rather do this with, and he really quarterbacked this thing like no one else. And it was really, really cool and a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, I want to just pause again and sort of, I'm the emotional guy between the two of us here. This has to be, you guys, this lifelong relationship of where you guys, just two rock and roll dudes met, and hey dude, wow, cool, wow, look at those guitars, whoa, you took these photos, and then now you guys have this, which is kind of like this sort of talisman of your friendship and your times and your respect.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, and I just think, see what I mean about the emotional thing? It's important to me that you guys have that before you have this. The book, but it's a product, right?
Yeah,
but it's not a product that I feel like you guys are going to get rich doing either. Right.
No.
This is definitely labor of love. And, for people listening, we're talking about a book again called Pictures Alive, rock shows of the 80s and beyond. And it has all the big people in it. Van Halen, Ozzy, AC/DC, Judas Priest, Kiss, Dio, Scorpions, Def Leppard, Iron Maiden, Motley Crue. It goes and goes and goes. Saxon, UFO, Michael Schenker is everywhere in this. Rainbow, Black Sabbath,
except
of course Kiss. And some of these shots, I like the gritty ones, the ones that are, it's obvious which ones are super hot because you got the focus, the lighting was right, and they're on a full page.
Yeah.
You played favorites, and of course you should have. So
exactly.
Yeah. So it's kind of important. Scott, I'm wondering, and you guys can comment and say whatever you're going to say. So the fact that he was shoving camera bits up, not up his ass, just to be clear, into his armpits, and taking photos without permission. And you were doing a layout of bootleg photos. Once again, to be clear, no one's making money off of this. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say, fans, this is a fans project.
Oh yeah, certainly. I think the cool thing is that everyone who's gotten this book, and you both can attest this, because they might not believe my opinion. I might think it's the greatest thing ever. But two things, one, it was a fan project, but we worked with a good printer. We didn't do some dog shit type of job. We kept the backgrounds rich with the black color, with the amplifiers behind. We have the song list. We tried to give everybody what a fan would want. And I think Dave kind of touched upon it. It really does take you back to that time. And all these little elements add to the flavor that then you read the little story, you see the set list, you go, oh, fuck, I didn't remember they had that on the encore. And it takes you back. And it's just those good times that we all had, kind of, 81 to 91, kind of in that ballpark, those 10 years. And then, like you touch upon the grittiness. Some of the photos are a little gritty. And the point is, you see Ozzy with Randy in 1981, they're in a little club. The lighting was a fucking red light and maybe a blue light. And maybe you got the purple as the combo, but that's all it was. And so you get these really basic photos. But we said to each other, I'm going to put that shot of Randy Rhoads in there, even if it's a little blurry, because here's a fucking legend who's no longer with us. And someone like Zakk Wylde or some big Randy fan would say, I at least want to see that photo. I know I want to see the photo of Ace getting electrocuted in Florida back in the days, even if it's blurry, because that was epic and I needed to see that. So we had a couple of ones that we were like on the fence, but I said, dude, give it to the fans. Let them be the judge. And I think they'd appreciate it, even if it's slightly off.
Those are my favorite ones.
Yeah, they really are. The Randy shots are the best.
No, I'm just, well, sure, but the gritty ones, the ones that, where Steve was falling off his buddy's shoulders and the, the lighting's perfect, and then as soon as he hit click, the light went off, or and that's what he ended up with, or whatever that, I just can't believe that you guys pulled this shit off. Let me ask you this: was there an attorney involved?
No, I learned a lot about some of the legal stuff with the Magic book.
Okay.
And Steve owns these photos. We're not licensing them from anybody else. So he's the rightful owner. We can do what we want. We didn't do a book all on Kiss. We didn't do a book all on AC/DC, which I think we would have gotten the bands involved. But, if you show 10 pages of Dio, I think the legal fees, nobody really wants to get involved with that. So it was just one of those things, we didn't, like I said, we paid, something like 15 grand to have the book printed. We've certainly haven't even recouped half of that. So it's like, we haven't made any money on it. I don't think anyone expects, if Kiss wants to sue me, knock themselves out, but they're going to be, I got nothing to give them, kind of thing.
Well, they have all the money. It's okay. They don't.
Yeah, I would like to believe that,
That's an interesting point, and I was going to ask that question myself because, while you're taking the photos, you got away with it in 83, let's say, just pick a random year out of the 80s. You got away with taking the photos, you were hanging them on your wall, everything's fine, no big deal. You got in and got out. But my question was, when you do a book and now you stand to profit off of these images, is that's where the legal line comes in. Like, can Gene Simmons come back and say, you guys are selling my image and I never gave you permission to shoot that photo? Or is that just great publicity for the book?
Kiss can't say, yeah, that's our makeup. If you use the makeup in some other form as like a design or something like that, that's, I think, a different animal. But a photograph is the photograph is the property of the photographer, and that's the bottom line.
Right.
That's right.
I understand that. My whole thinking was, it's the old using my likeness to make a profit. Now, you took that photo. It was in a public place. He's in an arena performing. You got away with taking the photo. You own the image. I understand that. And everybody's probably fine with it until the day you put out a book and it's on a shelf somewhere and you stand to make some money. And then that's the sticking point that I was curious to know if you guys explored that at all, or if it's just sort of a moot point because, you know, like you said, Scott, there's not much, there's not much there they can come after you for, but I was just curious, just purely curious.
Steve.
Well, I was saying if it ever came to that and they wanted to come after us for making money, I think I would say to them, I'd say, you're asking the wrong question. It's not about making money. You should be asking us, what did it cost us? Because we haven't made any money. Like Scott said, we haven't made any money off of you. I don't know if that's an issue or not, as far as,
there you go. Hey, you should be your own attorney. Look at that. Until you do turn a profit, there's no argument here, right?
I mean, that's my guess. I don't know.
That's not bad.
If anyone ever come to us, we'll let you guys know first.
That's not bad. I like that.
I feel like there's enough bands in here as a portfolio of, you know, the era and the time and all of the great times that you had. And you know, on side note, it would be awesome if you guys recouped at least, God forbid, made some gas money because of the, you know, just for, oh man, I'm really glad we did that. We recouped, and we got $100, you know, that's gas and a meal. Let's take our families out and live it up for a night, whatever, you know. Hey, can you get the tip? You know,
we always said it wasn't about the money. I mean, if we got the money back, great. But the fact was, honestly, God, we're fans first, like you guys, we're fans, right? Yeah. And just the response and the feedback we've gotten, I think we've sold, Scott, I think we've sold over 500 books so far, and that's all independent. That's all independently, okay? And
out of 1,000, we've only printed 1,000. So
we only printed 1,000, yeah. So we're a little bit more than halfway there, and that's it. There's not going to be any more after that. But my point is, our reward is people's comments, just like you guys. You know, brings you back to that time. I've never seen anything like this. It's great, and it's a trip down memory lane. That's our reward. It's great. You know what I mean?
It's heavy metal. It's heavy metal parking lot in a book. It's like everything. It's everything you want to see that most of us saw. And the people who have that sort of same feeling that I just sort of put into words, they need to have this book. If they want this, where can they go to get it right now?
Well, we have it at our website, which is picturesalive.net. Okay. And then you can find it on Amazon as well.
Great.
And Jay, so let me say one last thing. You were saying you're the emotional one. As we get older, and I'm in my 50s now, you start thinking about your legacy. And I know you had your time with the bands and so forth. And Steve actually has some band experience and so forth. But, respectfully, someday when Steve's gone and I'm gone, there's our name on a book of Steve's work, and where that book ends up, if it gets handed down and so forth, like that's your legacy. And you hope to leave something, and so that's it.
So people half our age, I'm speaking for all of us, people half our age, they love this shit. They're going to love this shit. They're searching Discogs for records by all of these bands right now that are out of fucking print. They need this book so they can put the needle in the groove and crack this thing open, right?
And I think if you go to your local Barnes and Noble or someplace that's got a lot of magazines, even at the local grocery store, there are these new things that the magazine publishers are doing. It's like here's a thing on Kiss, and maybe you see 3 photos you haven't seen before. The diehards have seen it all. And then they rehash the history and they give you some shit on Vinnie Vincent and Bruce Kulick. And it's like, it's just fluff. And then I saw the other day at the bookstore, there was Journey, there was 2 Kiss, there was Ozzy. And it's like, what are these things? Here's a book of 300 pages with over 400 photos that no one has ever seen before unless you have this book. You may have seen similar photos or poses, but Steve took all these. He's never sold them. He's never put them in magazines or sold them on eBay or whatever. And so we put them in a book.
It's because he loves rock and roll.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
Steve's buddies were asking, hey, dude, what happened with all those photos you used to have? You run into people as you get older that haven't seen you. And then now Steve is sending this book to some of his friends, and they're freaking out because they remember when they were at the concert with this, Steve.
Yeah.
The other thing,
Scott makes a great point. I was in the grocery store just yesterday and I saw one of those magazines you're talking about. It's like when People magazine decides to put out a rock and roll special edition.
Exactly.
This one was on AC/DC, and my son has brought home a couple of those, and I read through it having read everything that ever existed about every band I've ever loved. And you see the same old promo shot. You hear the rehashed history. It's all press release material. It's all fluff. It's like you give this to somebody who's never had a clue about the band as sort of a starter kit, but for anyone else, it's old hat. So your point is well made that these are one of a kind photos that you've never seen. You're not going to see unless you have this book. And I love that you pointed that out. And Steve, I wanted to ask, when you're putting this together, one of the things I love about it, and one of the reasons it took me so far down memory lane, is the little stories that go with each concert. So tell me about your thinking when you're putting the book together. Was there any debate as to, should this just be photos? Should I include the story? Am I a writer? Am I capable of retelling the story? Tell us about that.
Well, okay, that's where Scott come in. Because again, Scott, obviously knew about my photos and everything. And when we would be collaborating, he knew I had my ticket stubs. I kept all my ticket stubs. And he said, oh, that'd be great. We'll put the ticket stub under the band. And then it'd be cool if we put that's the beauty of this book. There's very little reading. Okay. There's just a little on the front page. And some shows I had some great stories. And I, up until this point in my life, fortunately, I've had a pretty good memory. Because I never partied at shows. That wasn't my thing. I never partied. And I can remember, that's why I can remember a lot of this stuff. So we'd work on the stories, and there's some pretty good ones that I just wanted to share. I don't know if you guys have any particular favorites or not, but everyone has one or two.
I love the fact that not only were you tenacious about sneaking in your camera and trying to get great photos, there was many a night where you would find the hotel that the bands were staying in and go meet them and introduce yourself and get things signed and all that. I mean, how did you manage to do that? Because I was a fan too, and I don't think I ever was able to find somebody's hotel room.
Well, sometimes what would happen is if we didn't know where they were staying, because, I had a couple friends a little older than me that kind of did this a little bit. And they if you look on the album cover, usually the band staying under the tour manager's name. So you would just call these different hotels in San Francisco and say, it's so-and-so staying there, right?
I love
Now,
it.
if that didn't work, what we would do then is after the show, we'd wait outside and follow the limousine back to the hotel.
Stalker 101, kid.
Yeah.
And, one of the famous stories we have in the book, the Judas Priest, 1982, the Screaming for Vengeance tour at the Cow Palace. We waited outside the Cow Palace, and here comes a limousine. And I had a painting I did in my art class in school, just a little cheesy watercolor Glenn Tipton. I held it up. The limousine stopped, and we ran up there. Me and my friends ran up there, and we're the only ones there. It's 2 hours after the concert, and in that limousine was Glenn Tipton and a girl sitting on either side of him. And sitting across was Rob Halford with a girl on either side of him. And he had his hands on either knee, right? I mean, they're really playing it up, And he signed my thing. He signed my painting. They take off. Well, here comes the next limousine. Well, that's got to be KK Downing. So we get in my buddy's truck. We're following him all through San Francisco. This guy was trying to lose us. I felt like we were in a movie scene, like a chase scene, right?
It's awesome.
This went on for like a half an hour. This went on for half an hour. It's probably 1 o'clock in the morning now, and we're still in high school. Well, finally, this guy, I don't know what he was thinking. He goes into a residential area. He goes into a dead end, like a court. Okay. Now we're blocking his way. He can't get out. But he backed up in my buddy's truck. Bam. He backed into the truck. So now everything stops. Everything just stops. We get out. There's 3 or 4 of us. We get out, and we just want an autograph. I think I had some photos from the concert before. And the window rolls down, and this is classic. The window rolls down, and in this, again, classic British voice, you hear this, "Did we do any damage to your vehicle?" It was KK Downing. It was great. I said, no, we just wanted, my buddy had this big old metal Chevy truck that had big old bumpers that didn't do any damage, and they were nice. And again, a couple of women in there, him and Ian Hill, and they signed what we wanted. They couldn't be nicer. Just, I don't know why they made a chase scene, but that's in the book. That story is in there. So
That's great. Yeah, yeah. I loved that story. There were so many stories in there where I thought, man, I thought I was a fan, but you really go the extra mile with some of the following them back to the hotel and that sort of thing. Was there any band on your bucket list that you never got to shoot during that time, or a tour that you never got to photograph?
you know what? Honestly, not really. I only did my favorites. I didn't do every. Whatever concert I went to, I would try to take photos. And the reason why
You got a lot of favorites, man.
I do. I do. But I got to a point where I was getting 2 and 3 of different tours. And I go, you know what? I think I got enough AC/DC. I think I got enough Van Halen. I think I got enough of Dio, right? And in '86, I kind of stopped. But who I didn't have was the original Kiss members. Okay, so that's where there's a 10-year gap. It ends on '86 on Dave Lee Roth's Eat 'Em Smile tour. And in '96, when Kiss reformed to do their reunion thing, I go, I got to get pictures of this, right? And I did. And then I got some more of the farewell in 2000, and that's when it stopped. So that kind of answers your question. I finally got the original Kiss. Yeah. And it was great. That's how it ends. That's how it ends.
Speaking of Kiss, you make an interesting point in the book where you photographed them with makeup and without makeup. And without makeup, I think in your words, they were kind of just another band.
Another band, yeah.
Yeah. So is there something about the time period, the 80s? Because obviously the 80s is very image heavy. The production is over the top. Was there something magical also about that time period that you're shooting where the bands are really visual? Even a band like Queensryche, looks more visual then than they do now.
Well, yes, that's a good point. You're right. That time period from 80 to 80 mid 80s, that was right. Big production, love big production. Judas Priest, Dio, Maiden. These guys always had these big productions, Right. And the good thing was they generally had good lighting. I always counted on good lighting. That's why some of those earlier shows, they're not, there's not much bright lighting. So I mean, yeah. Again, I was really just shooting my favorite bands, didn't matter what period it was. And with Kiss, I was still trying to buy into when they took the makeup off and they're doing. But I even say in there, yeah, they look like every other band. It was like they took the makeup off and Motley Crue was putting it back on.
Yeah.
84, 85, right? Yeah. And that's why I stopped taking pictures of Kiss after 85. I said I got enough Kiss, and they just look very ordinary. That's why I stopped.
But you know what?
Go ahead.
I was going to say, it's interesting is that, if you read some of the chat room talk and Kiss FAQ and stuff like this, you start to realize there's a lot of people that are Kiss fans that grew up with Crazy Nights. That was like their first show or something like that. So
yeah,
for me, I think it was kind of convincing Steve, hey, dude, you've got some pretty good photos from the non-makeup years. Let's not just kind of cast them aside. Let's use what we can use. And, Steve's point, some of them didn't come out that great, but, in fact, we had a really good shot of Gene, Paul, and Bruce coming up or up on the front of the stage, kind of like during Strutter of sorts, that we didn't even use in the book. I wish we had. But, there are some really good makeup shots. And for a lot of fans, that is their Kiss because they weren't old enough to see them, 83 or prior. So, it has its place. I'm not knocking it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I know a lot of people that will hold up Asylum and Lick It Up and say those are my favorite Kiss records. But yeah, I get it. And I remember when they were touring without the makeup, and I was kind of thinking similar to Steve, it's like, it would be just like seeing Rat, for example, or somebody, any other band of that era that was wearing the flashy, bright clothes and everything. You're going to get the Kiss music, but you're not going to get the magical Kiss experience that we all had plastered on our walls when we were growing up.
Yeah,
that's true. You know what I mean? Exactly true. But
I love the shots you have of Motley Crue on the Shout at the Devil stuff, because that was a very visual period for that band, and they were new and they were hot, and as you say, they were kind of the new Kiss. And you've got some great stuff in there from the Shout tour. Tell us about that show. Well,
I almost didn't go to that show. I only went to that show because my buddy Dom had an extra ticket, and I was just starting to get into him at that point. And we saw him open for Kiss the year before on the Creatures of the Night tour. Mm-hmm. I really didn't know anything about him then. So then a year later, they're making some noise with the Shout Out the Devil album. He was a fan. I said, okay, let's go. I brought my camera, and they played, they were starting their first headlining tour, but it was a small arenas, but still they sold it out. And they were just so raw and on fire. It was great. I'm really happy I got photos of that show because, they changed their image drastically the next year and so on. So that was really good. That was a good time period for them, I thought, That's when I really started to like them a lot,
To kind of stick with the theme here that we're rambling on about, favorites and moments that pertain here and stories that attach themselves. There are a couple of bands in here that are not mentioned on the back, or maybe in the preface, or there's not pictures of them on the front, and that's Saxon and Accept. But there's others that sort of kind of land in that same sort of like, scale.
Yeah.
You got like there's a spread of Rainbow. There's a spread of MSG. Now we're Rainbow, Saxon, Accept, MSG. Were those opening bands? Were you into them? Did you? Hey, these guys are kind of cool. I'm going to pull out my camera. Were you going to the concert to see that scale of band as much as you would Scorpions, Kiss, AC/DC, Van Halen?
100%.
Wow.
Shanker's probably my favorite guitar player. Blackmore, big fan of Blackmore, especially with the Dio albums. Okay. Yeah. And I remember that was it was Rainbow and Blue Oyster Cult. They co-headlined.
Black and Blue tour. Did you see that tour with Blue Oyster Cult and Black Sabbath?
No, I wish I did. The first
81,
one I saw Sabbath,
I think that's 81, maybe
80 or 81, right?
Yeah, maybe 80, 81. Yeah.
So one of my favorite bands is Sabbath with Dio. The Heaven and Hell, the Mob Rules. They're phenomenal.
Okay, back to your story. I'm sorry, I nerded out for a second.
Those bands maybe played smaller venues for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, like those Schenker shots are from a club in Palo Alto. Okay, and the Saxon one, small theater, small venue, but still. It was Saxon, I think, Accept just came out with Balls to the Wall.
That's Crusader tour.
Crusader, excuse me. Yeah, Crusader tour.
But Balls to the Wall for Accept and Crusader for Saxon.
Yeah. And those are, they both came out. They were, that was a great show. Great show.
Yeah. And then all these shows came through Texas. We were at the.
Okay. But what about, I got Queensryche opening for Dio in 1983. And we just learned about Queensryche probably a month or two before that. So that's going to be a great opener. And this is, and they're just playing off the EP. They didn't even have a first album out yet. It was just that 4-song EP they had, know?
Yep.
Yeah, so they might have been, well, they would have had to have. They were playing the EP, and then they were playing new songs from the Warning.
Right. That was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. So to answer your question, yes,
well, that makes your stock is rising.
Okay.
because especially the new wave of British heavy metal stuff, when that stuff kind of comes out and ends up opening for all the big American arena rock bands, and we as fans from like 1980 till about 86 maybe get to finally see those bands that we were reading about in fanzines just a couple of years prior, Xerox copies that some dude made in his mom's basement, while he's listening to, Metallica and Raven and shit like that.
Yeah.
To be able to see at least some of those bands that actually started to break through here for however and for whatever reason, and you capturing that on your buddy's shoulders after sneaking in a camera and getting stressed out, sweating your ass off, and didn't know if your camera was broken by the time you got in there from strapping it to your armpit hair. It's kind of an amazing thing to me. It's like, this is really cool that it's criminal. To an extent, it's guerrilla warfare. It's spy class. It's, all of these cool, like sort of, semi-threat kind of, phrases and words come to mind about you as just a fan? Like, oh my God, I got to take my camera. And it was like a mission. And like, yeah, I don't know if you had like a mantra or if you,
everything,
how you mentally and physically, did you work out to prepare yourself I'm shooting rainbow tomorrow. I gotta eat my Wheaties. I just don't know what you.
Of course, everything you just said, I never thought once of, because I'm a kid, right? I'm a teenage kid. I was looking forward to
of course.
And this is another thing. My buddy Dale, who was with me at most of these concerts, I'm on his shoulders. He pointed something out to me recently. Remember, this is all film. Digital didn't exist then, right?
Right.
So let's imagine this: I have a roll of film. I got to take it to the local film place to get developed, right? Now, back then, this is before 1 hour photo. They would have to send that film out to a developing processing place, right? Ask me how many times I worried about that film getting lost.
Every time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Every time. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then they would call me and say, okay, Steve, your film, your prints are here. Because it'd take a few days. And my buddy Dale goes, it's true. We were so excited to see, what did I get?
Yeah.
Did I get anything good? I mean, seriously, he'd go with me. We'd go to the store, and there's that envelope, with all the 4x6, pictures in there, right? And we'd sit there right there at the store, and I'd thumb through them really carefully, not make sure I didn't get any fingerprints on the pictures. And if I got a good shot means in focus and decent lighting. Okay, that's a good picture, no matter what.
Yeah.
And again, there's usually maybe, I'm lucky to get a handful, but that was the excitement. That's all it was. It was just a pure excitement. And I thought, man, okay, I got my heroes again. And now, okay, maybe there's 2 or 3 I'm gonna blow up and put on my wall amongst the rest of them.
Yeah.
And that's all it was. That's all it was.
What a great
I knew a guy that used to work in one of those photo developing places, and he would make copies of photos by guys like you. So we would go hang out at, parties or whatever, and he wouldn't steal the photographer's photos, but he would just make duplicate images. And look what this guy brought in on Saturday, last week or whatever. And he'd have photos of Saxon and Killer Dwarfs and, all this stuff. And we were just like, wow, this is so cool. And we thought he had the coolest job in the world because, I remember all that stuff. You don't know what you shot until you actually get the print days later and that sort of thing. It's a whole different world.
Until the guy at the party is, David Lee Roth's nephew, and go, hey, Uncle Dave, you should see this photographer's work. He's really good. Wait, don't you work at the photo mat? Come on, bring that guy's photo. What's his phone number? I'm going to call. Hey, man, you're breaking the law, son. You need to.
Yeah. I know the law, friend.
Yeah.
What did you ever fall off of Dale's shoulders?
No.
That's good.
That's I've never had that question asked for. Here's the thing. I've always been relatively a light guy. I'm just, I'm a light guy. I was even lighter then. So the good news is it wasn't very much effort to hoist me on someone's shoulders. Okay. And I was really good about not spending too much time up there because I'm blocking people behind me. Okay. And I try to scrunch down so I wouldn't block. And every time people throwing quarters at me or, coins at me, And then if they saw the camera, they go, oh, okay, sorry, man, that's cool. It was, the funny thing was, it seemed like I was the only one in the fucking place that had a camera. Yeah. It's like no one else thought to bring a camera except for Steve. You know what I mean? Yeah. So if they saw the camera, they'd give me a thumbs up and like, okay, you're cool. But I wouldn't abuse it. I wouldn't be up there. But I would do it 3, 4, 5 times throughout the show, a couple minutes at a time, snap some photos. Okay, come. And I would tap them on the head. They put me down. Yeah. And that's what we did. That's
I remember, I love that you made that point in the book because I remember that as well. Being at a concert, I'm 16 years old and you see a guy with a camera and he's not supposed to be there, but there's something about that, he's getting away with it. It's rebellion on top of rebellion. And you're like, all right, dude, stick it to the man.
Yeah. And that's just how it was, and again, almost everything was general admission then. So once I got past the security, I was pretty home free. You know what I mean? And that's how we did it.
Did you ever have I usually ask most of our guests on this show are musicians, and I oftentimes ask, about their Spinal Tap moment on stage or whatever. Did you ever have a time when you were shooting and your gear jammed up on you or crapped out on you or somebody got in the way or you had just some sort of nightmare experience trying to take a good photo?
Well, yeah, I think I mentioned this. So the Black Sabbath 1982, the Mob Rules tour, okay? 1982. And I was really excited because this is the first time I'm going to see Dio with Sabbath. This is a great album. And this is going to be great. Well, we did our usual thing. We got down on the floor and we would kind of weave our way up close to the front, but I made sure not to get too close because security could see me. So if I'm 10, 15 feet back from the barricade, they can't get to me. Okay. Even they can see me. And that crowd, my goodness, that freaking crowd was so fucking rowdy. Okay, that we actually were a little afraid at one point, seriously. And I took the photos I needed, and I remember telling Dale, whoever else, we need to back out of here because this is really, it feels, for the first time ever, we had common sense that, maybe we should, move from this one area because it was really that bad. And, so we did. And, but as far as, nothing. Fortunately, nothing ever broke, or I never really considered that. But no, it never broke, and it was just pretty straightforward. Again, you know what I mean? So yeah,
I asked that question because and again, not to make it about me, but I wanted to show you. You can appreciate this. I got a photo pass to shoot the Jimmy Page Robert Plant reunion in like '95 or something. And so I got the photo pass, so I'm allowed down in the pit, first 3 songs, right up against the stage, the drill. And it's the first time Page and Plant have been together in years, so it's this hotly anticipated comeback, the joining of forces, Jimmy Page, Robert Plant, all this stuff. I'm right there. Again, not a photographer, so I borrowed a camera from a reporter at the newspaper where I worked, and I said, put this thing on idiot mode, and I'm going to go down there and just get what I can get. And the lighting didn't work with me. It didn't cooperate. I'm no photographer to begin with. So I've got Jimmy Page and Robert Plant literally, 3 feet from my face, and I'm taking every photo I can. And it's film, right? So I get back to the office and I'm looking at the images. Not a damn one of them was worth a crap. They were all blacked out shadows. It was terrible.
Oh, that hurt.
I was so pissed because it was it was Jimmy Page and Robert Plant, and I was right there.
Well, you just said you're not a photographer.
Right.
You borrowed someone's camera, and you're kind of winging it, right, for the most part.
Yeah.
So that's a bummer, though.
I've had great luck, great dumb luck in the past. Like I said, I've got some really good photos doing that method. Give me a professional camera, set it on idiot mode, give me the photo pass. I usually can get something, but that one particular one, I couldn't get anything, and it was Robert Plant and Jimmy Page.
Oh, well, that's too bad. Sorry.
I knew you could appreciate that.
Oh, I can. I mean, I'm kind of counting my lucky stars that didn't happen to me.
Yeah. Yeah, better me than you. There's also some great stories towards the end of the book that aren't necessarily centered around the images. It's recollections of you talking about going to concerts with your buddies who you've mentioned here today on the show. There's little memories about you meeting some of these people. I loved your meeting with Ace Frehley, and I love the jam session with Y&T. So let's say there's a good story and a bad story, or not so great story. So tell us the Ace Frehley and the Y&T story.
Okay, so Ace Frehley was my, same thing, was the reason why I picked up a guitar, when I was probably 13 years old, right? And this is now, I think this was 1995, the NAMM show in Anaheim. Jason's probably familiar with that. You are too, probably, Dave.
Mm-hmm.
And this is before Ace rejoined Kiss. So they hadn't reformed yet, right? And he's there to sign for, I think, Gibson guitars, and he's signing a photo. And me and my buddy Pete were there. And we're really excited. I don't think I ever met Ace before. No, I haven't. And, to lack of a better word, he was kind of a dick. And, I was thinking, what can I say to this guy that he hasn't heard 100 times? Okay. And I get there my turn and he's signing whatever promo shot they had. I thought, okay. And recently, right before that, a few months before, I actually bought a Kiss pinball machine. Okay.
Mhm.
I thought, you know what? I'm going to tell Ace I bought a Kiss pedal machine. Maybe he hasn't heard that for a while. I go, hey, Ace, I just recently bought Kiss pinball machine. And Scott does this perfectly. He just utters one word, wonderful, in his Ace voice. like, right? Did I do, how about that? Do it all right, Scott?
Yeah.
Really well.
Wonderful.
Wonderful. And and to this day, and my wife was right there and she was taking a photo of us and she goes, you know what? I wanted to go up to him and say, you know, he's probably one of 10 people who just bought your last album. And you're a dick. She'll never forget how she was right there. She'll never forget that. And then the Y&T, let me tell you something. Y&T, Barry band where I'm at, I was fortunate enough to become good friends with Phil Kennemore, the bass player, original bass player in Y&T. I became friends with Dave Medichetti. And these two guys, they don't get any cooler than these two guys. Okay. Yeah. And in the book, my wife was throwing a surprise birthday party for me in 2003 in our backyard. And what she did was she had all the bands I played with over the years there, and I was supposed to play with all of them. Well, you know, a week or two before the party, she went to talk to Phil and said, hey, we're throwing, you know, she talked to Phil. And Phil was kind of a guy that stayed at home a lot. He didn't go out a lot. And she told him we're doing this party and, you know, we'd love for you to come. And he came. He showed up by himself.
Wow.
He came to my backyard party. The band I had at the time was a cover band called Rap Bastard, and we did a lot of Y&T. And he jammed with us. He picked up, and we did 3 Y&T songs. Then, a few months later, this very same band's playing a club over in Belmont. And I asked Phil about this. Phil Kennemore and Dave Medichetti came to the gig and jammed with my band. Oh. And we did 6 Y&T songs.
Wow.
So just a cool guy. And getting back to Dave Medichetti, I sent him a book. He thought it was great. He you know, there's a picture. If you go to our website, there's a picture of Dave holding the book.
Yeah.
Gave a great review. He actually without even asking, he sent our book to Eddie Trunk. It was one of our goals to get the book to Eddie Trunk because we figured he would love it because it's in his wheelhouse, right?
Right.
He got the book to Eddie Trunk. He confirmed he got it. He said, hey, Dave, I got the book. It looks great. I was just leaving town when I got it, but when I get back, I'll go through it and I'll say something on the air. Well, we don't know if that ever happened, but Dave got the book to Eddie without even asking. How cool is that?
Wow.
How fucking cool is that? So there you go. Yeah. There's that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So here's an impossible question. Out of all the photos you've taken, which one or which 3 would you say are you most proud of?
That's actually kind of easy.
Oh, okay.
That's kind of easy. It's got to be the one of Eddie jumping in the air doing the scissor kicks.
Yeah.
Just because that's a pure luck picture. It's pure luck. And I remember exactly what was going on at that time. I was on Dale's shoulders and I was following Eddie. I'm trying to stay in focus. I'm focusing, I'm following, and he's running. I'm following. He just jumped and I just took the picture. It was pure luck. But the lighting was perfect. The focus was perfect, So that's what, that's the one that people kind of comment the most about. And then the other one would probably be Randy Rhoads. I was able to get a good shot of Randy Rhoads at the Calp House in late 81. And then after that, I'm looking around because in my office, I have a lot of these pictures that are poster size. So it's very hard to say after that, but I love them all. I really do. I think they're great. I dig them.
Yeah.
I've been looking at 40 years. I never get tired of looking at them.
Yeah. The Eddie shot is pretty spectacular.
You should be proud of them. I think that it's been sort of a sidebar life's work, right? It's kind of like one of your, it might be in some air, it might be the old bowling trophy on that thing on the shelf over there. But at the same time, you have created a photo album, almost like, well, not a family photo album, but like sort of a moment in time, like a time machine.
Yeah.
And I really feel like that you and Scott have created here I go getting emotional again.
That's
something
okay.
That's super, super special.
Yeah.
Because these are all the bands that me and my friends, and I'll speak for Dave too, stood in line to buy the new record, stood in another line to buy the ticket.
the t-shirt.
Stood in another line to get in the show.
Get in. That's
Stood in
right.
another line to buy the t-shirt.
Yeah.
That's right. And it was worth
We're dedicated fans. You know what I mean?
it was worth the $6.50 I paid for the ticket.
Right.
It was it was
Right.
worth the $13.50 for the t-shirt.
Yeah.
It was
worth mowing the lawns to afford the ticket.
Yeah.
see what I mean? It's heavy metal parking lot in a book. And
Yeah.
You know,
I just
you're
think,
right. That's really nice. One thing I want to point out, because some people are probably wondering, the book costs $30. We didn't want to charge a ton of money because we weren't making money. We just want to make sure, there was a little bit of profit there. But, people go, oh, you could have got more for that. I go, well, we didn't want to get more for that. We didn't want to turn people away because it was $50 or $40. $30, it weighs 3 pounds. There's, 300 pages, all color, 400 plus photos. And we just want to be, make it easy for people.
I wish this was, no, I think that's a really good price. It's the cost of like a vinyl, buying a record, right? Buying an LP.
Yeah.
So if you're in a record store and you've got a couple of pieces of vinyl that you're picking up and you see this book on the shelf, for the cost of another record, I can get this book and holy shit, this has all, my faves in it.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a great price. And I think that it's really big of you guys to sort of, come together and think about someone like I just described.
Yeah, I think the point Steve was making is they would rather have it in the hands of people than profit off it.
Exactly. That's perfect.
It's what Scott said earlier. It's their mark. It's the mark they're going to leave. It's their legacy. And as you put this much work into it, and 2 years and all that time and effort and everything, at this point, it's just more important that people that appreciate it have it in their hands than you guys going to the bank with a big check. So.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Big cheers for that.
Yeah, hats off to you guys for creating such a great moment in time.
Well, let me just point one thing out. When we started this project, I said to Scott, Scott, do you think anyone's going to give a shit about these old photos? I mean, I've been looking at them for 40 years. I love them, but he goes, no, there's something here, man. There's something here. And I said, okay, let's roll the dice and go for it. And again, it's been really, what you guys have said is really sweet, by the way. So thank you. It's really cool. And that's our reward. That's it. That's all we need. It's great. You know what I mean? Yeah. Fortunately, we got a lot of those, and it makes it worthwhile. We're glad we did it. You know what I mean? So,
well, there's one person that I would like to throw shout outs here. Thank you to the Shoulders of Dale. Even though those Shoulders of Dale are not in the book,
that's true.
They're a vital tool to the making of this book.
Dale is the unsung hero.
Neither of Dale's shoulders were injured in the making of this book
that we know of.
One last thing. Speaking of which, during this 2-year process of this book, I didn't tell anyone I was doing this book. Didn't tell anyone. My wife knew a little bit, but no one else. And a couple of reasons. Because I didn't know if we were going to finish this thing. Mm-hmm. I didn't know what it was going to finally cost, right? But what happened after 2 years, we were so excited about it. It didn't matter what it cost. We were going to just pay for it. But what I did is once we got the book, I sent out 20 books to friends. I didn't tell them it was coming. Okay. But Dale, I called Dale. I said, hey, man, I got something for you. You need to come to my house. He goes, what is it? I can't tell you. You got to come to my house. I got something for you. So he came to my house. I had it in a package. I am sit down. I actually video him too. I wanted to film him, but and he opened it and he just couldn't believe it. I go, man, you're mentioned there quite a few times. He goes, really? I go, yeah, I mentioned you. I tried to mention people who I went to the shows with, but he's mentioned a lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he was great, man. He was just as big a fan as any of us. And he would get just as excited to see what kind of pictures did Steve get from being on my shoulders. You know what I mean? And so, again, just like the rest of us, we're just fans first and foremost. And if you like these bands, you'll probably like this book. That's really comes down to it.
Amen. That's exactly right. No Dales were injured in the making of this book.
No Dales were injured in the making.
Yeah.
Tell folks once again where they can go to find this, to buy the book.
You can find it at our website at picturesalive.net, or you can find it on Amazon. You can even find it on eBay if you're searching for some stuff. But you can find it. People have, like I said, really dug it. It like Steve said, it's 3 pounds. It's not just some cheesy piece of junk book. We printed it on good paper.
Yeah.
It's a quality book. You guys can attest that. Like I said, I don't mean to brag or tell anyone, what I think of it. The pictures, great spread of the greatest of all time in some people's estimations. Sure. And it's like a tribute to Eddie. He passed away during the making of the book. Dio, same thing.
Yeah.
I say if you're a Kiss fan, Van Halen, Motley, AC/DC, or Dio, it's an absolute must because there's a shit ton of photos. There's 60 pages of Kiss photos alone. And then, like you were saying, Jace, there's all these other little bands that, accept Saxon. The Saxon photos are solid because they're really clear. And there's guys that have passed away in that band. Or like you said, you saw them when they all still had hair or they were young. It was in their prime. And so it's a nice little snapshot of that time, like you said. And, it's a cool gift if you want to buy it for someone's birthday or something. Like it's a good book for your rock library or man cave.
I wish there was a way that they could go into a storefront like a Barnes and Nobles and like really hold it and look at it. Like,
that's
holy moly,
yeah.
They would start doing this, taking pictures of it with their phone. Dude, do you see this? Oh my God, how much? It's $30. Oh my, you got to get that for so-and-so. That's something that I can do for sure.
I will say that before the book was in my hands, I was on your website because that was my first exposure to the book. Jason said, "Hey, you need to check out this book."
And I meant it.
And I looked at the website and I was like, I was totally interested right off the get-go just from the website. So picturesalive.net, you can go get a preview of it. And I think it's a pretty decent preview because I saw that and went, oh man, this is good stuff. I could tell already just off the website. So don't take our word for it. Go to picturesalive.net, take a sneak peek, get a preview of what we're talking about. And then for $30, order it for God's sakes. You owe it to yourself. And you guys, you talk about your legacy. I think you can be proud of this. I know 2 years is a lot of time. You put a lot of work and effort into it, but it is something you should be proud of because I think it's a great addition to my collection. And Jason knows I have a collection of rock and roll books just, overflowing over here, but this one really stood out. So
I'm still learning how to read. So,
So he really liked this one.
I've got a lot of books piling up because I'm still learning how to read. But that's why you had me at pictures.
Yeah.
You just had me at pictures. So, yeah.
We really wanted you guys to have a copy of the book, whether we did your show or not. We were hoping to do your show, but we thought these guys, this is up there. This is in their wheelhouse. They're going to dig this stuff. And you're right. Until it's in your hand. You know what, Jason? I don't know if you remember this, but I sent you the book. And you sent me an email, and this is what you said. This is what I love. Is I've told people this. You said you just emailed. You said, "Dude, your book rules." That's all you said.
Well, yeah, because that's how I talk.
I loved it, but it was great. I mean, dude, your book rules, and I laughed.
There's an endorsement for you.
There you go. Yeah.
It was easy. It was easy to just blurt that out, and that was probably. Right before I called Dave basically and said, dude, you need to check this out. I may have, Dave, I think I texted you a few photos of the book.
Yeah.
I'm not fucking around. It's a real book. I'm like holding the page open, snapping photos. I'm going, look, dude. And then he went to your website and the rest is history. So
I was sold from the get-go.
Scott and I have had this talk before, whereas I would tell him, I go, we've been fortunate that people are buying this book. We're nobody. They don't know. We're no big stars. They don't know who we are. And they're buying this thing just off of looking at their phone on the website or their laptop or something, right? And you guys just mentioned, imagine having this fucker in your hand, right? Yeah. If you're in a bookstore, I mean, like, oh my God. So we've been very blessed that people will buy it just by looking at the website or whatever, because it's not in stores right now. It's just on the website. So you kind of hit home by saying, hey, if this thing's in your hands, you're not going to deny it.
Well, it goes back to what I was saying at the top of the show. I think beyond the amazing photographs and the great stories, you struck a nerve with people. This is a moment in time that a lot of us remember, we cherish. It was such a period of so many good times. Music was coming at us fast and hard, and it was the soundtrack to our lives. So you tapped into that with this book, and I think that's what, hooks people right there. And then, the quality speaks for itself, but you've managed to capture that intangible thing where you're in people's heads and in their memories, and that's really tough to beat. Well,
and then there's a story beyond that story. And the fact is this is why I insisted to Dave that we have to have, you were sort of suggesting that, dude, here's my book. You don't know me, blah, blah, blah. You're going to blah, blah, blah. And you were right to do that, Steve. You were right to reach out. You won that one. There's no doubt. But here's the deal. It's like how you captured these photos is the story.
Yeah.
Oh, I snuck my camera into all these badass shows. No photo pass, nothing. Had to sneak my shit in, had to get past security, had to not get caught, had to not crush Dale, had to move out of the way, had to fear for my life. I mean, it's like
It's because I'm a teenager and rock and roll is that important to me at that time.
Exactly.
But it's also,
we all can relate to that.
But nowadays, you would hear the story and go, he did what? It's pretty fucking smooth.
Yeah.
Smooth, man. It's pretty smooth.
Picturesalive.net, folks. That's where you need to go to check out the website and the book. You can order it from there. You can get a preview of the book. Some of Steve's photos are pictured on the website. $30 and it's yours, and I highly recommend it. I think Jason does too. You definitely owe it to yourself to walk down memory lane and take a look at these great images and the stories. I love the stories.
It's incredible. Steve Roney and Scott Davis, thank you so very much for being with us today.
Yeah,
hey guys, our pleasure. Thank you.
On behalf of my co-host Jason McMaster, I'm Metal Dave Glessner, along with our special guest today, Steve Roney and Scott Davis on the Talk Louder podcast.